Last night, the President of the United States reached out to schedule a call. I appreciate this opportunity to discuss how we can protect our workers and build our economies. I will make clear to the President that those interests are best served by cooperation and mutual respect, including of our sovereignty. Let's be clear. We're all on the same page. We won't back down. We will respond forcefully. Nothing is off the table to defend our workers and our country.
A comprehensive analysis. In a strategically orchestrated and highly confidential move, Prime Minister Mark Carney revealed that he held a direct conversation with U.S. President Donald Trump on a Monday. Welcome viewers to my channel. If you're new here, please subscribe, like my video and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update. This high-level dialogue was a pivotal part of the Liberal government's persistent efforts to address the economically painful American tariffs on key Canadian industries, including steel, aluminum, and the automotive sector. However, in his subsequent public remarks, Carney adopted a tone of sobering realism, explicitly stating that a rapid and complete resolution to these trade barriers is not a likely outcome in the immediate future. His cautious messaging was a deliberate attempt to manage public expectations and prevent the creation of a sense of false hope among Canadian businesses and workers who have been hard hit by the trade dispute. This approach reflects the government's understanding of the unpredictable nature of the Trump administration and the need for a long-term strategy rather than a quick fix. The timing of this phone call was a deliberate political and economic choice, as it occurred on the same day that the Canadian government lifted the majority of its own counter tariffs on U.S. goods. This action was widely interpreted as a profound and strategic goodwill gesture, a unilateral act of de-escalation intended to create a more constructive atmosphere for negotiations. By removing these retaliatory duties, particularly on a wide range of products now covered by the new Canada-US-Mexico Agreement, CUSMA, Canada hoped to signal its unwavering commitment to a return to open trade and to prompt a reciprocal response from the United States. This move was a calculated risk, as it effectively gave up a key piece of leverage in the ongoing trade dispute without a guaranteed corresponding concession from the U.S. It was a bet on the power of diplomacy and de-escalation over the blunt force of confrontation, a strategy the government is banking on to ultimately succeed in restoring stability to the North American market, despite the immediate domestic political cost. Carney offered a rare and insightful glimpse into the substance of his conversation with President Trump, characterizing it as a good conversation. He detailed that the two leaders engaged in a substantive and lengthy exchange that went beyond purely commercial matters. The scope of their discussion was broad and multifaceted, including geopolitical, other issues, labor issues, etc. This detail underscores the deep and complex nature of the Canada-US relationship, which is intertwined with issues of security, labor mobility, and broader global affairs. The fact that they spoke on a range of topics indicates that the relationship is not solely defined by the trade dispute. To further these diplomatic efforts, Carney disclosed that his new clerk of the Privy Council, Michael Sabia, was dispatched to Washington. Sabia's mission is part of a broader, sustained campaign of engagement, with a revolving door of Canadian officials, including senior cabinet ministers, continuously traveling to the U.S. Capitol to lobby lawmakers and administration officials. This suggests a comprehensive, multi-pronged approach to resolving the trade impasse, with communication channels open at all levels of government to find a way forward and mitigate the economic damage. Despite this intense diplomatic activity, Carney was notably pragmatic about the timeline for a breakthrough. He used the diplomatic phrase, white smoke, a term associated with the election of a new pope, to candidly state, don't expect immediate white smoke on one of these strategic sectors. This public message was a deliberate attempt to manage public and business expectations, preventing a backlash from the lack of a quick resolution. He framed Sabia's visit as just one component of an ongoing, patient, and persistent process of dialogue that he and his government will continue to have until the matter is resolved. The subtlety of this messaging aims to project both unwavering determination and a clear-eyed realism about the challenges ahead, acknowledging that complex trade issues with a volatile administration require time and persistent effort. The revelation of the conversation was initially a surprise, as the Prime Minister's office (PMO) had not followed its usual protocol of releasing a public summary or readout of the call. This departure from standard practice led to media speculation and raised questions about the transparency of the government's foreign policy. The PMO later addressed the matter in a statement, explaining that the Prime Minister and the President are in close and frequent communication, and that this consistent dialogue is ultimately in the best interest of Canadian workers, businesses, and the entire nation. This strategic silence suggests a shift in diplomatic style, where certain high-level conversations are now being conducted with a greater degree of discretion, away from the immediate glare of public scrutiny. This could be a response to the unpredictable nature of President Trump's public statements and a way to maintain more control over the narrative and diplomatic process. The domestic political fallout and fiscal imperatives of the federal budget. The Prime Minister's diplomatic maneuvers on the international stage have generated significant domestic political consequences, setting the stage for a fiery confrontation in Parliament. The decision to unilaterally lift the counter tariffs was particularly condemned by the leader of the official opposition, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. Now set to face Carney in the House of Commons for the first time since winning a by-election, Poilievre wasted no time in labeling the move as yet another capitulation and climbed down by Mark Carney. He argued that the Prime Minister had foolishly surrendered Canada's primary source of leverage without securing a corresponding concession from the United States. Poilievre asserted that a Conservative government would have taken a much firmer and more principled stance, advocating for a mutual and simultaneous removal of tariffs. He declared that he would have, respectfully, gone to the President and insisted on the principle of reciprocity: you remove your tariffs, we remove ours. This fundamental disagreement on trade strategy, one based on a more unilateral, trusting approach versus one rooted in a more reciprocal, quid pro quo negotiation style, will undoubtedly become a central and defining point of debate when Parliament resumes, shaping the political discourse and public opinion on Canada's foreign policy. The unresolved trade war with the United States and the approaching 5-year review of CUSMA create a highly complex and uncertain economic backdrop for the Carney government. These pressing international issues were a central focus of the 2-day cabinet retreat, where ministers convened behind closed doors to finalize their legislative and fiscal agenda for the fall session. A major point of discussion and deliberation was the upcoming federal budget. Typically presented in the spring, the budget was delayed until October due to the recent federal election. This fiscal document is expected to be a comprehensive and ambitious policy statement, outlining the government's priorities and spending commitments for the coming year. During the election campaign, Carney made several significant and potentially conflicting promises that he must now reconcile within this fiscal framework. He pledged to balance the government's operating budget over the next 3 years, a challenging objective that will require meticulous financial management and tough decisions on spending cuts or revenue generation. Simultaneously, he also promised a substantial increase in defense spending, amounting to billions of dollars, and committed to funding major infrastructure projects across the country, such as new transit lines or energy projects. The cabinet's task is to meticulously craft a budget that can reconcile these potentially conflicting goals, fiscal prudence and increased public spending, while also addressing the economic uncertainty and pain caused by the ongoing trade dispute. The budget will be a critical test of the government's ability to manage the country's finances effectively, respond to both pressing domestic needs, and navigate complex international pressures. The outcome of these discussions will determine how the government allocates resources to both strengthen the domestic economy and prepare for future international challenges.